I was 6 weeks into the job when I first saw her stay past the end of her shift, and I thought she was foolish. That was my honest opinion. I was 22 years old, working overnight security at Mercy Ridge County Hospital, still learning which hallways looped back on themselves and which vending machine ate quarters. I had a lot of opinions in those days that I have since revised. The one about her is the one I am most glad to have buried. Her name was Maya Reyes. She worked the fourth floor general medical ward, what the attendings called the floor, which I later understood was their way of making clear that it was below them. She was maybe 30, slight build, dark hair pulled tight under her cap, scrubs that had seen too many washes. She moved the way people move when they are entirely sure of where they are going and have no interest in convincing you of it. She never made noise. She never stood at the desk and talked about her weekend. She came in, she knew her patients, and she worked. The night it started, she had a patient in room 412. His name was Staff Sergeant Dale Morrow, 34 years old, admitted after a head-on collision on Route 9. TBI, the chart said, stable but unresponsive. The prognosis, as I heard the nurses say it, was wait and see, which I had already figured out, was the hospital's way of saying nobody was sure of anything. His wife had left at midnight. He had no other visitors. The room was quiet. Maya Reyes did not leave. At 2 in the morning, I was doing my corridor pass on 4, and I saw her through the glass panel in his door, sitting in the chair pulled up to the side of the bed, not reading, not on her phone, just watching him. Talking, I realized as after a moment. Not loud enough for me to hear. Just talking to a man who couldn't answer. I moved on. When I came back 40 minutes later, she was still there. I thought, she is going to be exhausted by morning, and it will accomplish nothing. Because he is not going to hear her, and that is a hard truth that experienced nurses learn, and new ones haven't. I thought I was being practical. I was being 22. Dr. Harlan Voss came through on late rounds around 2:30. He was the chief attending on the medical floor, tall, silver-haired, the kind of man who had practiced medicine long enough to be certain he had seen everything. He wore his authority the way some men wear a watch, casually, always visible, meant to be noticed. He glanced through the glass at room 412 without slowing, and then he saw Maya Reyes still in the chair, and he pushed the door open. I could hear him from the hallway. He was not quiet. "You're off the clock," he said. "This isn't your shift." She stood. I wanted to monitor the transition. The night team has him. He was not unkind. Exactly. He was the way people are when they have already decided you are beneath explaining things to. "Step back. You're a floor nurse, not a physician. This is not your clinical call. Do your job and go home." She looked at him. She did not argue. She said, "Yes, doctor," and she stepped back. But she did not leave the floor. I watched her move to the nurse's station at the end of the corridor. She sat down at the monitoring terminal, where she could see room 412's telemetry on the screen. She got a cup of coffee from the break room. She did not go home. At 3:25 in the morning, she stood up from that terminal so fast that the chair rolled back and hit the wall. I crossed the corridor in 3 steps. She was already at the door to 412. I heard her say to the night charge nurse, a wide-awake veteran named Perez who had been watching her all night with the same skepticism I had, "His left pupil is sluggish. He's posturing on the right side. Something's changing." Perez looked. "He's been stable all evening." "He's not stable now." She was not raising her voice. She was precise. "I need you to get the attending." Perez got Dr. Voss, doctor. Voss arrived with his reading glasses still in his hand, clearly pulled from somewhere comfortable, and he examined Dale Morrow's pupils himself. And when he stepped back, his face was the careful blank of a man who is doing the math. "It could be a positional artifact," he said. "It isn't. Maya had the monitor pulling the last 20 minutes of data. The waveform changed here," she said, pointing. "And here, the pressures are asymmetric. This is herniation developing." Voss looked at her. "You're a floor nurse. I know what herniation looks like." She said it without heat, without defiance, as if it were simply a fact about the world that he was welcome to examine. "I need a CT now." I do not know what Voss heard in her voice. Maybe it was just the flatness of certainty, the sound of someone who is not guessing and knows she is. Not guessing. He called for the resident. The resident ordered the CT. The CT showed an expanding epidural hematoma on the left side, building pressure against the brainstem that had not been visible on admission imaging and had been developing. The neurosurgeon would later estimate for the last 90 minutes. They had the OR staffed, and Dale Morrow in surgery within 22 minutes of Maya Reyes standing up from that terminal. The neurosurgeon who came out to the family waiting room at 6 in the morning told Dale Morrow's wife that her husband was going to recover. She asked what had happened, and the surgeon said that a nurse had caught a developing hemorrhage that, left another hour, would have been unsurvivable. The wife asked the nurse's name, and the surgeon said he didn't know. He'd have to ask the floor. I know, because I was the one standing in the corridor who heard it. I looked down the hall toward the nurse's station, where Maya Reyes was finishing her notes at the terminal, still in those worn scrubs, coffee long gone cold beside her. 7 hours past the end of her shift. I thought about what I had told myself at 2 in the morning, that she was foolish, that she was trying too hard, that experienced nurses learn to let go. I did not feel good about it. She left around 7. She did not say anything dramatic. She signed out, picked up her jacket from the hook by the station, a plain civilian jacket, the olive drab kind, and walked to the elevator. I held the door. She looked at me, and there was nothing in her eyes except the kind of tired that lies behind the eyes, not on the face. She nodded once. The elevator closed. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong again. At 9 that morning, 6 men walked through the main entrance of Mercy Ridge County Hospital, and I felt the lobby change when they came in. They were in dress uniform, marine blue, gold buttons, white covers, service ribbons stacked to the shoulder. Their boots were polished to a finish I had only ever seen in photographs. 6 of them, moving together the way men move when they have moved together for a long time in places where moving wrong had consequences. The one in front was a gunnery sergeant, barrel-chested, early 40s, a jaw like a brick, and he had the look of a man who had not slept much and did not require sympathy for it. He stopped at my desk. "Morrow," he said. "Staff Sergeant Dale Morrow, room?" 412, I said. "He's out of surgery. He's recovering." The gunny closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he opened them. "Who saved him?" I told him what I knew. Floor nurse on 4. She was here all night. She's the one who caught it. He looked at me a long time. "Name Reyes," I said. "Maya Reyes." Something moved in his face. It was not a big thing, just a tightening around the eyes, a stillness that settled across the 6 of them the way a hand settles over a flame. The Marine standing just behind the gunny turned to the man beside him, and I did not catch what he said. "Is she here?" the gunny asked. "She just came back on shift," I said. "I had seen her badge in at 7:50. We took the elevator to 4, doctor." Voss was at the nurse's station when the doors opened, morning rounds, a clipboard in his hand, mid-sentence with a resident. He looked at the 6 men in dress uniform, and his mouth stopped moving. She was at the far end of the corridor, coming out of a patient room, chart in hand, already moving to the next door. The gunnery sergeant saw her at the same moment she saw him. She stopped. He set it across the full length of the corridor, over the heads of nurses and a morning orderly and doctor. Voss and his resident and me, he set it at a volume that made the whole floor go still. Doc Reyes, she did not move for a moment. Then she straightened. All 6 Marines brought their heels together at once. It was not a slow thing. It snapped, dress covers coming level, 6 right hands rising in a single motion, the corridor going so quiet I could hear the telemetry monitor beeping at the nurse's station. The gunny held the salute and said, loud enough for the floor to hear, "Sergeant Maya Reyes, Navy Cross, Force Reconnaissance. You carried 4 of my men out of a building that came down around you, and you sat up 11 hours on a dirt floor, keeping them breathing until we could get a bird in. One of those men is in room 412. Ma'am, this unit does not forget." She walked the length of the corridor toward him. She was in her worn scrubs and her hospital ID, and she walked like a woman who had carried weight much heavier than a man before, and knew she could carry it again. When she reached the gunny, he lowered his salute and reached into his breast pocket and produced a coin. A heavy, dark thing, milled edges, the eagle and anchor pressed into the face, and he pressed it into her hand and closed her fingers around it. She looked down at it for a moment. Then she looked up, and she held his eyes, and something passed between them that had no language and needed none. Dr. Voss had not moved from the nurse's station. He was holding his clipboard at his side, and he was looking at Maya Reyes the way a man looks when he is doing the math on everything he has said, and finding the sum does not reflect well on him. He did not say a word. He did not need to. I thought about 2:30 in the morning. I thought about the words, "Step back, you're a floor nurse, not a physician." I thought about the way she had said, "Yes, doctor," and stayed anyway, not to prove anything to him, not out of anger, just because Dale Morrow's pupils were not right and she knew it, and she was not the kind of person who walks away from something she knows. The Marines stayed long enough to see Dale Morrow, through the window of his recovery room, the gunny pressing his hand flat against the glass for a moment, something private. And then they left the way they had come, together, measured, quiet. Maya Reyes went back to her charts. I stood in the corridor of the 4th floor of Mercy Ridge County Hospital for a long time after that, thinking about what I had mistaken for foolishness and what it had actually been all along. A woman who had learned, in a building coming down in the dark, that you do not leave someone behind because it is past the end of your shift. I finished my rounds. I nodded to her when I passed the nurse's station. She nodded back, coin in the breast pocket of her scrub top, moving on to the next patient like the morning had been ordinary. For her, I think it had been.